Welcome everybody to Women Who Code Dallas Fort Worth channel monthly mentor panel on managing up. Let me introduce you once again to our host for this evening and panel moderator, Stacy. Take it away, Stacy.
Well, thank you so much, Linda, and thank you to all of our panelists and all of our folks joining us here today. So, hi, we're going to talk about managing up. But before we talk about managing up, which probably sounds a little oblivious and a little difficult, let's start by getting to know our panelists. So, and this is in no particular order, Kate Dramstad. Kate is a senior engineering manager at SeatGeek, where she helps empower professional sports teams and concert promoters to build innovative data products. In her 12 years of working in tech, she's been a part of massive companies like Microsoft and tiny companies where she was a development team of one, Rocksbox. She currently works from beautiful Helena, Montana, where she does as much community theater as possible and hangs out with her giant dog. Pleasure to get to know you, Kate. Next is Kaylee Kohfeldt. Kaylee is a senior software engineering manager at Fanatics Betting and Gaming, where she leads the payments team. Prior to joining Fanatics, Kaylee worked as a software engineer for many years and is an experienced Java and Python developer. She has a passion for mentoring and teaching others. She has instructed several workshops and also has LinkedIn Learning course, which helps people practice their Python skills. Kaylee enjoys continuous learning and constantly looks for ways to expand her knowledge. She completed her master's degree in computer science from Georgia Tech in 2023. Woo! Originally from Florida, she currently resides in Jersey City, New Jersey. I wonder where Jersey City would be. In her spare time, she enjoys traveling, watching dog videos, and nature walks. Pleasure to get to know you, Kaylee. And last and certainly not least, Claire Tolbert. Claire is a software engineering manager at Larson Texts Incorporated. After spending about a decade as a software engineer, she stepped into leadership in July of 2022 and is still learning about the subject of leadership daily. When she's not at work, Claire enjoys spending time with her partner, her dogs, playing board games, and reading. Pleasure to get to know you, Claire. Now, these are a little blurbs of how I know these wonderful ladies here, but there's a reason why these are some of the people that we tap shoulders for managing up. And it has to do with a certain energy and certain presence and certain way that they carry themselves in their ability to execute and how they ended up as managers. Very effectively through managing up. So kind of beyond the scope of any of the kind of introductions, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and where you are currently in your career?
Do you want me to go first?
Go ahead, Kaylee. Go ahead.
Okay. Like Stacy mentioned, I'm a senior software engineering manager at Fanatics Betting and Gaming. Actually, I also started being a software engineering manager when I joined this company in July of 2022. I had to look it up because the years, they really blur together, but it was July 2022 when I started being a manager. It's been super exciting. We kind of built this from the ground up, so it's been super fun to be involved in my first time officially being a manager at like something that we were building from the ground up. So it's been very fun, and we're launched in 16 states. So that's great.
Awesome. I can go next. So like Stacy said, I'm currently a senior engineering manager at SeatGeek. I have been at SeatGeek for about a year and a half now. And prior to that, I worked at Stitch Fix, which is how I know Stacy. And Stitch Fix is where I made the transition from IC to manager. I think that was back in 2018. As far as kind of like my manager journey, I actually just started having a manager report into me. So I'm doing the manager of managers thing officially now for the first time, which is exciting. But yeah, I work on some kind of cool behind the scenes talk with the pro sports teams all the time, which is funny because I am not a sports person at all. As I mentioned, I am a theater person, but man, I have learned a lot about the NFL in the last year. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
Howdy, y'all. I'm Claire. Some of y'all may have seen my face before around these parts. So, I'm a software engineering manager at a tiny company that's based in Pennsylvania called Larson Texts and also Big Ideas Learning. So it is like math education software. So if you picture a classroom where they're putting away a physical textbook, turning their attention to like a smartboard at the front, or they're opening Chromebooks to log on and take a test or learn a lesson or anything, that's our software. So that's been really exciting because this was my first foray into leadership, and I had a bit of a soul search through the pandemic. There was a lot of different things going on. So all at the same time, I got a therapist, a psychiatrist, a career coach, and leveled up a couple of other areas of my life, and was just like, we're going to figure this out. We're going to calm down. We're going to see what's going on. And that kind of led me to leadership, of saying, I don't think I can keep complaining if I'm not a part of the solution. And so now, yeah, I wanted to be a math teacher forever, but I come from a family of teachers, so they talked me out of it. And now this feels like the closest I'll ever get to actually being in a classroom. Last year, when we had our pilot launch around back to school, I actually got to help with some of the support because we were a little shorthanded, which had me troubleshooting with teachers live in a classroom. And that was surreal. They are the most patient troubleshooters too. They'll have a room full of children. They're like, it's fine. They'll play on their iPads for a minute. Let's figure this out. Yeah, that's all.
So kind of tying into that, like what's within your purview? Like what's within your scope as a manager? And what do you kind of see yourself as a specialist in as a manager? And like what does your typical work week look like?
I can start. Larson is really small, so my scope as EM is enormous compared to what I had experienced before, which is probably my biggest challenge. I came from bigger dev shops where we were broken up functionally. Stacy knows this. She and I worked together an eternity ago, where dev teams were highly specialized. And now I manage a team of holistic across the board, doing everything all at once. So this is my first time sort of being like everything all at once. Not just you own this 20% of this application. We're building this whole application from scratch with the team that I manage. And that's just a different challenge that I think I wasn't really ready for. And that's, I don't know, management in general, from my experience, is that it's never the same thing 2 days in a row. It's never even the same thing 30 minutes back to back. And it's just whatever is someone else's problem who works with me, who they can't handle, like that they can't handle that problem, that becomes my problem to solve, is kind of how I picture it. If you're familiar with D&D or anything, I always picture myself like a paladin with a big shield in front of my team, just trying to protect them, let them get through whatever they need to get through, and fight off business, sales, marketing, everyone else.
I love that. I feel like if I knew more about D&D, I want to have my like this is my persona character.
We can workshop it. You tell me how you
Okay.
manage, and I'll tell you what you are.
Great. Okay, so in terms of like my scope and my purview, right now I sit over two teams within SeatGeek. One is responsible for delivering we work with some teams where we are their back office, like box office software. So it's not secondary ticketing. It's like they're buying their tickets directly from SeatGeek. And so we work on serving that data back to customers or back to our clients so that they can take advantage of that in their own data warehouses. So data product stuff. The other team that I'm responsible for, and that's the first team that I came in managing, partners with teams in order to get their pricing right so that you don't charge too high and end up not selling everything. You don't charge too low and end up having everything scooped up by scalpers, and then you don't, get the upside value of that. So like getting pricing just right. So both of these teams are very heavy in data, which is something that I had not done before. And one of them includes managing a couple of data scientists, which I have no background in data science. So that was an interesting expansion of my role. You will almost always manage somebody who is smarter than you or has done more than you. But this was very like, I don't speak a lot of your same language. So very interesting engineering manager challenge there. But as far as kind of my like specialization as a manager, one of the things that I love the most is the puzzle of what work needs to be done for the team and on what timeline, and what people are like, what are their goals and their stretch and their growth opportunities, and kind of taking those two things and melding them together to get this like optimal, all right, we're going to do everything that we need to do on the timeline that we need to do it in a way that also accommodates all of the specific people and their needs on the team. So that is my favorite part about being a manager, and the thing that I think I do particularly well. So yeah, that's my little summary. So.
And I thought we were gonna like go through and name our D&D character versions of ourselves.
Listen,
I'm like,
I had
We
Kate
should do.
loaded and ready to go. I think Kate's an artificer, like having all these different resources and having to study on different things, but then pouring all the ingredients in together to make the thing that the people need. Kaylee, I need more time on you because it could be a lot of things. I think like a wizard or a warlock, because like I think there's a lot of magic involved with money in general, making money go from point A to point B. Having worked in fintech, there's just like wizards that live in databases at this point. That's gotta be it.
I'll hope for an answer by the end of the panel.
Yeah.
I'll
yeah,
hold
I'm
you
like
to it,
going like,
actually.
is there a qualification for a druid, healer, janitor? That's my job. Because sometimes I'm fighting the good fight, and sometimes I'm just the person throwing sawdust on the throw up. Like that's I'm just here to make sure that nobody slips and falls and accidentally kills themselves. I don't have the equipment to properly fix this issue right now, but I do have this sawdust.
That strikes too close to home today. So. I think we've all got a little janitor then.
Like, is there a D&D janitor? Is there a D&D janitor position? Or we can call it a groundskeeper. That would be a good assumption. So now back to the topic at hand. I'm going to ask it very vaguely, but what is managing up? Like, this gets said a lot to a lot of people. And it feels very much like, if you know, you know, but there's no other way for some people to describe like your deficiencies or the things you need to do or whatever than saying managing up. So what is it? What is managing up?
So I feel like I misunderstood this before in a way that a lot of people probably misunderstand it, in that previously I had thought that managing up was just getting your manager to do what you want, whatever that might mean. And I have come to learn it is not that. It's actually about like, changing your communication style to meet your manager's communication style, and sort of like being a chameleon in a way to communicate to different people in the ways that they will most understand and most be receptive to your information that you're trying to share, which I actually think like it's a lot nicer and it sounds a lot less manipulative than managing up, because it's a totally different thing than honestly what I had misunderstood it to be and what probably a lot of people misunderstand it to be.
Yeah, I think that that's a great, like it's about learning about the other person. I think the mistake that I made early on was thinking that like, well, the relationship between my manager just like is what it is. Like I walked into the room, they walked into the room, and like, well, all right, I guess that's what it is. Whereas I think managing up is kind of acknowledging like, I'm going to be curious about what this person needs, how they want to communicate, what's important to them. And I want to understand that. so that then I can make sure that I'm helping them do their job, but I can also make sure that I can set them up for success, getting me what I need out of them as a manager. So it's that like, you got to have that like curiosity and understanding of the other person. And in this case, the other person is your manager, in order for you guys to be like mutually successful in what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I agree. I think about this a lot, and I talk about it with a couple of my employees a lot, because I have a couple people who will come in to one-on-ones and say like, I'm sorry, I'm just complaining. But there are people who come in and they'll describe like, this is the problem that I've been dealing with. These are the 3 things that I've tried to solve this. These are the different ways I have approached this problem. None of these are working, blah, 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 blah. I really could use your insight and advice, versus just like 30 minutes of, and this is another reason why I hate this job. And this is another reason why I hate this job. Like the people who, if you come to me, I tell them all the time, like, you come to me with a problem and I've tried this before, I've tried this, it didn't work, or this feels fully out of my zone. I don't even know where to start on this. Please help. That's a very different conversation than just like metaphorically kicking over like a filing cabinet in my office and just complaining. And that to me is where I try to find that sweet spot. They're always, I always tell everybody like, you're welcome to just complain for 30 minutes. This is your meeting. But when I think about that, because I then think about it in terms of me with my boss too, of like, what do I need to escalate to them? Not only to say like, well, this thing is on fire, help me. It's like, no, here are the steps that my team has taken, that I have taken to attempt to resolve this. This is officially a 3-alarm fire. Please get involved. Here's your life vest. And that just, yeah. So when I have those people who come in with those good things of like, these are the different things I've tried, especially like I find out from a lot of those conversations, challenges that my employees are dealing with that I don't even realize they're dealing with day to day, because they're talking about it with each other in like a dev channel, which is fair and fine. But oh, the build was broken for 3 days this week. I didn't know the build was, none of y'all said that in stand up. What's going on? Do you need help? How can I help? Who broke it? Do we need to help them with a PR? Like, those sort of things. And so, yeah, I always welcome that. Like, tell me how to do my job better, but in a way that is constructive and genuine, of like, we're just trying to all be better cogs at the same time.
No, I love the way that you describe that, Claire, in terms of like it's come with, here's a problem, here's everything I tried, which I think is interestingly a skill that a lot of us develop as ICs when we're like debugging something, or we're like, hey, my environment's broken. And we learned that like when you just show up and it's like, I get error, like you're not going to get as much help as when you say like, hey, this is what I'm seeing. I tried this, I tried that, I tried that. Like it's the same skill. It's just applied in like a more people focused context. So you guys are probably already doing the same like foundational managing up skills. Now you're just going to apply them in a different context. So.
Well, I don't know about y'all, but some of that, especially what Kaylee cited, I don't remember ever seeing that on a job description. I don't know. This sounds kind of complicated. Is this a not my job, or is this a implied at every job kind of skill set? Or is it a single skill? Is it a skill set? Like how is managing it? What quantifies managing up?
That's a good question. I think of it like an avenue that you can choose to take. Like if someone on my team is not regularly providing that level of feedback, or not regular, or is just kind of getting stuff done, like that's not a detractor for me at my company. Also, it's not Microsoft, so like God only knows what they expect from you, Kate. But but I just, yeah, like that's, and this is just my opinion, but it's just an avenue that you can choose to take, and you could hone it like a skill. I think you could get particularly good at it. But I don't expect every single person everywhere to constantly be in like a solution mindset, and I work from the problem backwards. And like, I think it's fair to just kind of focus on different areas of it, and you call out the truly egregious things along the way. But I don't know. That's my thought process. I'm fascinated to hear what the rest of y'all think.
I do think it's a skill set that will be very advantageous to you. Like, do you have a manager? Yes. Does that manager impact your life? Yes. Like, do you want that manager to have like the best relationship with you as possible? Probably yes. Like, you probably want a really good relationship. So I feel like it is like a mesh of skills though, like active listening, like understanding like what your manager's actually getting at. And like, I mean, one of my skip levels is so good at understanding, and like this is managing down for them, but he's very good at understanding what I actually mean when I ask a question. And you can do the same thing in the opposite direction, right? Like, oh, are we going to open more staff engineering positions? Like, what do you really mean by that? Like, do you need another staff engineer? Are you like, do you have someone you're trying to refer? Like, what are you actually trying to ask there? Because like, you're probably hinting at something in any given direction. And like, you can do the same thing when your manager asks you a question, like, will project XYZ be done on time? Like, what have you heard? Like, is there a specific reason you're concerned? Like, let me quell your anxieties. As well as just like communicating up in a way that's like if your manager's constantly commenting on your spike documents and saying like, hey, like, could you add a sequence diagram, or could you like do whatever? Like, maybe just start putting sequence diagrams in your spike documents. Like, it'll be so much easier. Like, then you're managing up and you're looking fantastic. Like, I think like all of these things kind of come together to make you look really good and make you look like you know what you're doing. And like, not that you don't know what you're doing because you didn't put one specific sequence diagram, but maybe that's your manager's pet peeve. And like, they're gonna think this girl doesn't know the sequence of these events. Like, so I think it's just something, if you're like observing people, that can be not a huge hurdle that will just like kind of put a shine on a lot of things that you do.
Yeah, I think along with that, it's if you're interested, if like you're really gunning for career growth, like if you want to be leveling up, if you want that promotion, managing up is a really like I think critical skill set at that time. Like if you're in a role and you're like, I'm really happy hanging out at this equilibrium and like my manager seems to be getting what they need, like I'm not going to worry about it. Like I'm not going to think about managing up right now, and that's fine. But I think in situations where you are trying to get more out of your manager, that's when managing up becomes like even more important. So like is it every job all the time? Like to Kaylee's point, like it's relevant in every job, but kind of like when you choose to exercise it or not may vary kind of depending on your goals. But
so I kind of wanted to tie into this. Some of the things that like managing up can be the kind of like code word for. And sometimes it can be called managing up for, even though it might just be like managing sideways. In that it's meeting your manager's needs, being someone who helps your coworkers be successful, managing expectations. Part of that is clear and concise communication, right? Understanding that you are not the only person, that this person is responsible to know what the heck you're doing. Part of that can be things like executive presence, depending on your position. High enough in the IC track that becomes pretty important. Relationship management, directly and sideways and otherwise. And the one that comes into play, I think, a lot that isn't necessarily called out is magnifying your manager. Are you being a force multiplier for your manager as part of like what is a managing up skill set, right? Like, are you helping your manager achieve for you and for sideways, right? It's like, what are some other like kind of code words attached or meanings attached to what is kind of that managing up skill set? Maybe we could do like, okay, here's a spicy one. I'm going to put it spicy. Like, how is this like relevant or pertinent, especially if you have a quote bad manager or that you have poor communication skills with, or, in unclear direction? What changes with managing up?
Claire can go. I saw the mute. I was ready to let anyone else go. All right. So I think it becomes more important as you have like a, bad manager. If they're like a poor communicator, you don't really understand like what they want from you, or like your expectations are like a mismatch. It's like, there's this crazy thing where you can just ask your manager, like, what are your expectations? What is the best way to communicate with you? And at some points you just have to take a pause and do that, unless you're going to try to change teams or go to a different company. So like it becomes very important. And then from like managing up and like managing all around, like maybe you talk to your peers and they have like ideas on how to deal with this manager, and like, why does so and so have a better relationship with our manager than me? Like, what does that person do differently? I think is like a good thing to look at as well. It's like, oh, so and so seems to not get like 100 messages a day about things that they thought they already communicated, or whatever the case may be. Like, let me ask that person, like, because sometimes if you have a bad manager, they might not even be good at responding to the question, how do I best communicate with you? Which is a real shame. So then you have to kind of look around and say like, how do you communicate with this person? Because I'm struggling. And that might be helpful as well.
Yeah, I think the thing with the bad manager is that's helpful in the context of managing up is stepping back and being like, what realistically is the like bare minimum that I need from my manager? What do I need to know from them? And kind of stripping back all the things where it's like, maybe your last manager was a good manager, and so you were getting, XYZ from them, and that was great. But in reality, like, you only really need X from, your new bad manager, and you can go get Y and Z from other sources. And so kind of being really strategic around, in that bad manager moment, I know exactly what I want, and I can focus on figuring out the pathway to get that from them. So whether that's like, I need them to, I need my accomplishments to be visible to them because I'm going after a promotion. I need their buy-in on a strategy that I'm trying to push. But it might not be like, I go and I get my venting about work from somewhere else, or I go and I get my like information on the overall strategic direction of the company from somebody else, because it's not going to come from them. So like, just kind of thinking through like what you need and what you don't need from that person, and going and getting the rest of it elsewhere.
I'm going to throw one little thing in there, which is like caution about venting to your manager, because the things you say to your manager takes seriously. So if you are, it needs to be constructive. And the way that you talk, and maybe that's maybe that's a managing up skill, right? Like the way that you execute, the way you talk, the way you leverage, is not to complain or vent, but to, try and be solution driven. I don't know, but like I've had some bad experiences where people are just frustrated and they turn it on someone because they can't always necessarily take it on themselves. And then that causes problems for someone else who did not deserve it. And, or, whatever else can happen. So just like cautionary tales.
Yeah, I love that you bring that up, Stacy, because that's something that like I learned a lesson in my private life that I then have brought into management about this, which is that many moons ago I learned the hard way with a very close personal friend that in general, I am not the hype friend. I'm not like a cheerleader friend. I'm the mom friend. So you come to me when you have a problem that you want help solving. I like go into solving mode with friends very quickly. And I learned the hard way that that stings in the wrong circumstances, and that I didn't take the responsibility on with that friendship to first ask, right now when you're coming to me, are you just coming to complain, or are you coming to empathize with the other side, see things? Because I'm going right into like, well, think about it from this way. Did you consider this? And that's just like blow after blow after blow on this person who's like raw, which I didn't realize. Anyway, we're not going to dissect that right now, but that was like this huge awakening with another friend kind of giving me some feedback in there of like, hey, you weren't a mom, you were a mom friend and you didn't need to be. And that now I do that very specifically with my folks on my team and with anyone who just even works vaguely near me, that you get like a free pass to hand me either, you know, a blue card for I'm complaining for just a minute. I just need 10 minutes to get this out of my system and then I'm going to go right back to it, or a red card for I need you to be involved. I need you to get involved and help me solve this problem, because I was kind of making that mistake early on where employees would come into one-on-ones and they're just venting and I'm like on the warpath. I'm like, cool, got it. I'll have their head on a stake by noon tomorrow. What do you need? And they're like, no, I was just kind of upset for a minute. And so now like that lesson that I learned years ago, in the hardest of ways, I still like think about almost every single day with friends, where even in my one-on-ones to this day, if someone even kind of starts down this path, I'll kind of ask like real quick, do you want me to just be on listening ears and stand by, or do you need me to help you solve this? Because I'm here for either, but I need to know if I need to go have conversations with people afterwards, or if I just go back to my normal meeting schedule.
So I think that something that Kate brought up was really interesting in kind of turning it around a little bit. Does maybe putting yourself and kind of doing the managing up and maybe putting yourself in your manager's shoes, so to speak, change how you see them, how you approach them, are they even a bad manager? Could it just be the context in which you see and experience them, but they're actually secretly amazing at their job? But like part of being amazing at their job is like not being amazing with you. Whatever that thing is, it's like I know that this doesn't make sense, but all the managers are laughing right now because they're like, oh my God. Tell me stories. I'm here for the tea.
A bad manager is a bad manager. It's like I'm like chuckling because I feel like I could give a 3-hour TED talk on this. Like the biggest problem, the reason that I got into leadership very consciously was because what I was witnessing around me in the industry was a consistent pattern of promoting specifically technical men into leadership positions with zero training, zero experience, zero conscious thought of this person will be effectively in charge of people's day-to-day lives. And they do not take that responsibility even 2% seriously. That is like a bad manager to me. A bad manager isn't like, oh, you took 3 days to respond to my email, or like, hey, reminding you about my sequence diagram, Kaylee, don't forget to check it out. Like that might be someone who's too busy, who, yes, in that context, understanding what they're doing, maybe they're floundering, maybe they need more help, whatever. I have a bucket of empathy for that person. The person who is just, they were employee number 7 at a startup and then it exploded and now they lead a team of 150 people who all of whom are perpetuating the same problems.
Claire, are we talking about lived experiences right now?
I'm not gonna name names.
I can't imagine where and when we may have experienced this one. I don't know.
It's the problem is it's not just one. It's like that is what my whole thing from day one was like, I am not trying to be the best manager. I am trying not to be the worst I've ever had. That's my goal. Like, I will not be the best manager in the world because right now I'm a year and a half in, almost 2 years in. I bet I'm making mistakes as we speak that 6 months from now I'm gonna be like, yikes. And my boss in college at my internship talked about how code that you write today in 6 months should embarrass you. And not that it is worth going back and taking every moment to go back and rewrite code you wrote 6 months ago, but that you should find such joy and peace knowing how much you have grown in that 6 month time. And so like that thought process alone may not even exist in some of these mediocre middle managers' minds. And so no, I give them no leeway. If they get, maybe some therapy, maybe some coaching, read some books, understand the human experience, then I'll give them a little bit of a pass. Until then, they get not an inch with me, let alone a mile. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
On the bad manager piece here for me is like, are they a bad manager? Right. I think one of the things that I've learned to do is, try to gather some, like, does everybody feel this way about this person? Like, is it just me? And then use that kind of information to go, okay, not everybody feels this way. Like if this person seems to be well respected above me, like, what does that mean? Oh, are they really good at managing up? Are they really good at just like kind of, or managing up or like influencing above? Are they really good at, kind of promoting their work and being very vocal and influencing outside of the rest of the org? Like trying to figure out what is it that this person is good at, so that then I can play into what they are good at. I can learn from what they are good at and be like, yep, that's what I'm getting out of this management relationship. So, it's like just kind of meeting people where they're at instead of spending a ton of time, with the exception of like the bad case that Claire was talking about, right? Like there are some bad managers who are like bad. And then there are some bad managers who are like, this is just not a really great fit. And I think that you're lacking in certain areas, but I can work through this. And like, just trying to figure out where are they at? What can I do about that? Okay. Keep going. So.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Kate's right on point. Like, just pick what you can learn from them. Like, maybe they're really good at communicating to execs, or maybe they're really good at like, talking to vendors in a way that makes the vendors do the thing that you need them to do. And just like take that one little gem and, put it in a basket and move on with your life. Like, that's like a very positive way of thinking. So I like that.
Yeah, it's a bad manager or a bad person. Like everybody feels that way when like something hits the fan and we all have to leave now or something like that. And you're like, but that guy's not coming to our like our talk group. We're just like going, no, that guy can live on that island for the rest of his life. And you're like going, you're maybe like empathetic, like, oh, they just went through that too. And you're like, and everybody's like, no, don't you dare let him swim over to our island. I think it's kind of interesting sometimes how we can like hide some of that to a certain degree, right? And have you ever had like managing up mean you basically are doing your manager's job? Is that what managing up can sometimes turn into, is being the manager? Or is that how you ended up being the manager? What happened? Did you just manage up to the point that you leveled up and then you were like, oh my goodness, I'm here now? Or was it, I mean, Claire talks about a conscientious decision, but I feel like the level up boss lady attitude was there for many years ahead of time. It was just like it erupted into a new position. Who hurt me? So many people, Claire. So many people. I am a female high-level IC. What would you like to know? Who hasn't hurt me, Claire? That's the real question. All right. Passing it on to our lovely panelists.
So like going back to the like, did you end up becoming your own manager in these cases? I think one thing I will say I have written at least the outline of every single document that became my promotion packet. I have always been the person who put together, these are my accomplishments. Here's how they map to the rubric. Here's like, I have always been the person to make the case for this is why I should be the next level. And I think that that is a, yes, correct, Stacy. This is my other specialty is like getting people to not let me languish in promotion land forever. I'm very aggressive about avoiding that. But I think that's like the example of managing up where it's like, if that's important to you, like make it super easy for your manager to make it a slam dunk. Like, and that's like a great thing that you can do. It's an exercise in like selling yourself and like celebrating your accomplishments and like figuring out how to do that. That's a skill to build. But it's also like, yeah, I did this for you. So, you know, you just have to go stand in front of people and like say everything that I just wrote down and great. Now I'm promoted and you look good because you developed me and there we go. So.
Yeah, I'm like fortunate in that I don't feel like I have done my manager's job. I think like the promotion document is a great example of where like a lot of times you do have to do that. You have to do some form of that. Like either like we have like a gap analysis document that I use with my team. And basically I just put like the competencies for your level and the competencies for the next level. And I like put the things you're doing at the next level and like, you know, then we work together and you say like, well, what about this? I did this thing, and then we put it in there and we talk about it at our one-on-ones, etc. But I do think it like a lot of times that will help you so much because writing promotion documents isn't very fun. I've written some very, very hefty promotion documents. And if you can make their lives easier to get you promoted, that's a great idea. Yeah, I think there's some key things to do like that you might think are like your manager's job, but actually if you just do them, like it'll get done faster. Like I also think like another example is like when you need more developers on your team and you think like, oh, like my manager will just magically notice that we don't have enough developers because like obviously we're not getting that much done in any given like increment of time and like I need more developers and it's so obvious to everyone. But no, actually, if you put together a document on why you need more developers and like what kind of skills they need and like what levels they need to be, etc., like you'll get a lot more you'll get a lot farther with that document than just like, hey, I need more developers in a random one-on-one. Like, okay. And I guess that is a skill, like maybe your manager is responsive to, hey, I need more developers, but most managers have like a whole chain of people that they need to go and ask for money to do this thing. So they need some like actual document to point to say why they need this thing. So it will be easier, but yeah, fortunately I don't feel like I've done my manager's job. So that's good.
I think like I don't even know if this answers our original question, but that touching on documentation, I think I've learned that it is even more important in a leadership role than I think it was in my development roles. Don't tell my previous bosses I said that. But like that is, I've now been through a couple cycles of like particularly poor performance of employees. I mean, like particularly poor performance in managing and that with HR and leadership and things, and then particularly good at performance. I mean, and you know, problems with other teams and what we need from them. It always comes down to like, have you documented it? Do you have all of this listed out? Whatever, to the point where like, I just literally am documenting everything all day, every day now. Like, okay, cool. We had this discussion, whatever, like all of my one-on-ones, I take notes the entire time. I have it in a shared document where employees can add notes to. So like if I muted myself, love that special talent of mine. If you're tracking your own growth and then like I talk about this a lot that like it makes it impossible for me to say no to. If you come to me with like, here are all the things I've done in the last year that went above and beyond my call of duty, and especially if you have like any numbers behind them. I improved our CI/CD pipeline and reduced our build time by 8 minutes per build or like anything like that. That's like, hello, leadership, here's a number. And they're like, yay, we love numbers. So it's just, those things that you're like deep in the weeds on, if it takes 15 seconds to pull up a doc and jot it down, it then makes it so much easier later, especially for performance evaluations. My company does performance evaluations quarterly. If I didn't take notes, I would cry more often than I already do. So yeah, putting anything in the context of numbers and having very specific examples, especially because some people who are that high up who are reviewing these things they're not going to like pull up a Jira ticket or look at your PR, but they're going to see like, oh, 100% of their whatever. I can't even make up a metric right now because my brain is mush, but they will believe you, but you have to like have that data to show, and then it just makes it so easy. Any of the ones where I have data like that, it's almost auto approved. It's just not even a question. It's like, yep, no, we've seen them. They're blowing it out of the water. Here's all the numbers that say it. Cool. Done. Next.
Well, kind of to tie into that, like, do you think there's kind of like a managing up, managing sideways expectation for like the staff ICs that you're like, is that your partner in crime? Or, you know, what kind of, and what are the expectations there? Like, do you say, okay, they are responsible for this person's, you know, development as a developer, and I'm about making sure that that pathway is clear and that they have the resources, and like, how does that relationship work in terms of like managing up and managing sideways? I'm kind of curious what your thoughts are, and what do you expect?
I feel like I definitely expect that from my staff engineers. Like, one of the key things is like, I expect you to bring me problems, right? Like, and you have to know if your manager is like you cannot bring me a problem without a solution person, or you can bring me problems. That is really key to management. That's one of the key, like, kind of differentiators of managers. But so I do expect my staff engineers to bring me problems, not necessarily solutions. If they have a solution, that's amazing. But if everyone on the team doesn't understand this new technology we just put in, and you're super worried about them going on call, like, I need to know that, right? Like, we need to set aside time for training. And like, if you don't bring that to me, maybe I just thought like, well, everyone had a little story, a little something or another, like, let's all just support it in production. Like, and that people are not comfortable with that. They're, obviously coming to you and saying like, how do I do this? Or like, I'm going on call, what should I think about? And then I do expect them to talk to their peers on other teams and sort of like notice common themes and bubble things up. Like, I think the build time is a great example of like, holy cow, like 8 developers were stuck for 8 hours on Tuesday. Like, that is unfortunate. And then multiply that because you talk to your peers and this was a problem on every team. So like bubbling those types of things up and like really pushing for like, especially like more of the developer experience stuff, is super helpful. So I do expect that. And then just like, hey, there's this giant hole in our code. I'm really worried about it. It could explode at any moment. Like, great. I'm so glad you told me, because now we can actually think about fixing that giant hole instead of just letting it like get bigger and bigger and bigger. So I absolutely expect that at the staff level, and really at all levels. I expect people to bubble up problems, but especially at the higher level.
I think one thing at the staff level that I expect in terms of that like manager partnership, and I have to have this conversation with folks directly a lot sometimes. I want to hear what staff perception of people problems on the teams are. And that is not like somebody coming and God, what's the word? My brain is also mush. Like, that's not somebody coming to tattle on me and say like, hey, I noticed this bad relationship between like these two people or this weird interaction. Like, at that point, like, you are mature enough and you have eyes in spaces that I'm not going to have. And like, you are responsible for helping build this team and the culture of this team, that like, I want to hear those kinds of things from you. And like, that's part of our partnership as a manager. It's like, we are both responsible for the health of this team. It's not like you get to put your head in the sand and just focus on like the technical things that get you excited. It's like you need to be a leader in other contexts. And so that's a shared thing between us. So that's kind of a managing sideways thing.
So we have a question from the audience that I want to make sure to bring in, which is managing up and managing politics. And when does this become a game of politics? Or how much is managing up a game of politics? We talked a little bit about the bad manager and the good manager and the environment of your manager and the environment of you. Where is it? What does it look like? What's the tea?
Okay, this is my TED Talk, which is we have given the name politics to what is really just understanding complex people and networks of people. And we have made it this like bad thing where really like playing politics is being curious and trying to understand different players and the relationships between them. And that is not like somehow something that like is bad to have. Like it exists. Like we're humans. Any group of humans working in a sufficiently large organization is going to develop a network of complicated relationships. And so I think that like there's this kind of like dirty association with managing up. Like if you're like, oh, if it's just me playing politics, then like that's somehow bad, or like I shouldn't be doing that, or I shouldn't have to do that. But it's really just about like understanding people and relationships and networks and like being curious and interested and thoughtful around those. And so like, I don't know, that's politics is something that like we say to try to get out of doing something that I think is just very fundamentally working together. But anyway, I'll step off my soapbox now. I don't like politics.
No, I think that's fair. I kind of went through this back in the day. A different company that will remain unnamed was basically forcing us through like a personality test that was going to label us in like one of 4 buckets is what it came down to, which was absurd to me. And that it got to me because it was this idea of like, oh, we're going to have our profile pictures is going to have your personality type on it, and then you'll have these like help books that teach you how to communicate with a person of that personality type. And I'm like, what you're describing is just getting to know someone that you need to work with, understanding their communication style, understanding their needs. Yeah, it was DISC. And but yeah, that what we're doing is we're like throwing all of that of the person to person interactions, like these, like you're talking about, these like complex human relationships that have to exist. Like they have to exist in the workplace because we're humans and we're conscious. We're not the new BMW robot that was just released. Like we're going to have to understand that, you know, these people prefer to things like our board. I have to present to our board once a quarter, and they have like very specific needs for what they want in a slide. Like it's a bunch of information that's presented to them. So they have given us guidelines of like, please make it only this much, then put stuff in the executive notes, then do this, like, that's fine. They're communicating to me what their expectations are. For them to take in 3 hours of information at once a quarter, that's a lot. And I don't know. So I think that I agree that there's like a little bit of, oh, you know, that's the politics at play. And it's like, well, that's just kind of getting to know your coworkers and them getting to know you and being able to, I don't know. I think it has like this inherent manipulative undertone, which is, that's like how I communicate with anyone. I communicate differently with my partner than I do my mother, than I do my next door neighbor. Like, because I know them, because I am aware of our relationships, and because it would be weird for me to communicate with my next door neighbor the way that I do with my partner.
It's just it's so interesting how like sometimes the corporate solutions citing some of those, like, let's see if we can help people quantify, and if they can quantify, that's certainly going to help them with their communication issues. We put numbers and types to things, that's going to help a lot. I think it's really interesting how these kind of like personality tests have definitely done a rager through corporations, when really it's like information for you about you for you, not information the company needs about you in order to place you in a little like, oh well, clearly they don't get together, this is a CI type, they're not going to play nice, right? Like, turns out you're best friends. It's what is it, what do they call it, like corporate horoscopes or corporate horology. um but anyway.
I like that you said that because I called it a corporate horoscope one time, and whatever group I was with, that did not hit. They were like, "What are you talking about?" So I just really love that that came full circle for me personally in this moment.
But I do want to shout out, Claire, the Clifton Strengths, I think is actually really awesome. And I remember having one specific moment with that where I did the Clifton Strengths with my whole team, and we went around and talked about like, here are our strengths. And there was somebody on the team who I was like frustrated with their performance and like, what is up with this person? I don't get it. And going through that exercise like was a big like light bulb. Oh, they just think about things super completely differently from me, and I had not picked up from it. So thank you, Clifton Strengths, for like swapping that relationship around.
Wait. What's your top 5? Do you remember your top 5?
Oh, I'm like a achiever, problem solver, individualizer, relator, something else. They're like all in 2 buckets. Like I am missing 2 full buckets in there. But yeah.
I can tell you mine. Strategic is my number 1. Activator number 2, ideation, individualization. My number 5 is command. So, but it means that I lead with strategic thinking, which means I can be sometimes a little bad about like executing and relationship building. But not really, because I look at all the little colors and they all seem to blend together. So they're not all like in little categories. But I think it's really interesting because that I think is actually a really valid kind of piece. I always say take a bunch of these tests if they help you find and look introspectively at yourself in order to figure out how you can better understand other people, because you now know yourself better, then it's always a tool. Sorry to kind of divert on that one. But kind of our last question from the audience. How do you handle or manage up with somebody who's like part of your team? So a coworker, who's an expert in an area you're not. Like, how do you identify what they're trying to go for? Maybe how you can like take a little piece of that and elevate yourself. You know, what are some of like the managing up skills that you can kind of bear upon coworkers and kind of work through?
Well, I mentioned some of this in kind of what I'm doing day to day. I've got kind of two different disciplines that kind of fall out of my background that I manage. So I manage both data scientists and analytics engineers. And I am a backend software engineer who ran away from SQL as fast as she possibly could, thanks Rails and Active Record. So anyway, the thing that I try to do a lot is one, if there is a rubric that somebody else in the organization has written for this is what an analytics engineer looks like, this is what the requirements are, I'm gonna lean heavily into that and make sure that I am really grounded in what is in there, and I'm aligning with the folks who report to me on like what that rubric is. So I'm gonna, you know, rely on the resources that I have within the company, but I'm also gonna be okay asking dumb questions over and over again to get them to explain some of what is going on. Because if I just sit there and nod, like I'm not going to learn it, I'm never going to get any better. So I might as well ask the dumb questions, put myself outside of my comfort zone, start to learn there, And then that also gives me a check of an understanding of how comfortable are they with this material? How on top of it do they feel? How are they doing at communicating this? How well are they describing their impact in what they're working on? And those are all things that I can coach generally in terms of like, hey, I'm not seeing the connection here between what you're doing and what our team overall is trying to accomplish. And so that like kind of general, here's how you show up, here's how you have an impact, here's how you work together, all of that coaching still applies. And a lot of focusing on that brings other skills forward. So yeah.
That's basically exactly what I was going to say, because I have an employee who's like our security champion, and he's on this proof of concept team that's doing that I'm not even working with day to day. So not only do I not understand specifically what they're doing, but I'm also just not even there every day to hear about it. And so I do very much the same thing where I'm like, if you can teach it to me, then I feel very confident that you have a firm understanding, like Grey's Anatomy, see one, do one, teach one, right? They'll get there. And then if you catch, if they're stumbling along the way and like, oh, well, this way, I don't expect them to be an expert, but if this is the thing you're doing all day, every day and building out a proof of concept, then I imagine there is the ability in there to explain it to someone who has, zero concept for it. And exactly that, they're like, I'm never afraid to just start asking the questions. And I'm like, and if I were a database, just let's really get in here for a minute. If you were to put that on a map, where would you, okay, on the left, okay, that's where I was thinking I was going to put it too.
Are we calling this devs only? Is this a new dating site, Claire? If I was a database, how would you add to my table?
Listen, if I had that answer, I think I would have figured out some other things long ago.
Yeah, I think like asking the questions, and then if it's something I really need to understand and I'm really not sure that I'm getting it, like asking for the document, or even like making my own document and saying like, this is what I understand you to be saying. Is this what you're saying? I drew a picture. Like, we can't talk past each other when there's a literal photo in front of us. Like, I think service A is talking to service B, and then it publishes to a Kafka topic. And they're like, no. Like, this Kafka topic belongs between A and B. Like, as you can tell, big fan of like diagrams, tables, pictures. Because if there's like a table with how things should act, and like A is 1 and B is 3 and C is 4, so the outcome of this is 57. Like, okay, we're not talking past each other now. Like, we're on the same page. We can look at this together and actually understand each other. Like, because I feel like, yeah, the talking past each other, I've literally left a room with like 5 engineers, and each of those engineers has like a different understanding of what things look like. And if you make a picture, it really, really helps that we all understand what's going on, especially if you move it around as you're talking.
Kaylee, I think you just explained my job, which is I take the requirements and I present them to the engineers, and then I make pretty pictures that everyone can understand at various levels. And then they're just like, oh my gosh, product people can look at the same thing as an engineer, and then we can all be on the same page, and then I can drift around it. Because I put a pretty picture next to a diagram, and they were like, whoa.
I love the pretty pictures, but any will do. Like, I sent one of my engineers a picture, and the next day it was like beautiful. And what I had handed her was nowhere near pretty. Like, it was just boxes and arrows. And I was like, wow, that was really nice. Like, she made it pretty.
I agree, because I think there's so much to be said about doing something wrong publicly. And what I mean by that is like, there's like, the best way to get an answer online is to post the wrong one. So don't go on Reddit and be like, how do I copy and paste something with JavaScript or whatever? You say like, oh, I learned this cool new library to copy and paste in JavaScript, and you have like 300 people who are like, that's the worst thing, don't use that one, actually use this one. And there's something to be said about like, okay, if in absence of a diagram, a document, a whatever, I'm going to throw one together and I'm going to send this to you. You tell me what I did wrong. You tell me where I got this wrong, because it's a lot easier to like edit down, edit around than to start from scratch. And yeah, there's absolutely something, because I'm happy to be humbled if I misunderstood your sequence.
I think Claire just said treat everything like it's a pull request. Like shoot it out, see what happens. Well, with our final moments here, we've only got about 10 minutes left. I wanted to ask each of our panelists if they have any bits of final advice and where we can find them, what they're up to, and any little tidbits they want to share.
All right. I think like the key to all of this was just like communication and like asking for what you want and understanding like what the people above you want, and then communicating appropriately to them in a way that they understand. I feel like is a skill that not everyone has, and you can build it. So that's great. And it just takes practice and asking questions in the best way you can. You can find me on LinkedIn. I am there. And you can click my course. That would be very nice if you did that. Thank you.
Yeah, I think Kaylee summed it up pretty well. I think, you know, a lot of this is just like recognizing that everyone you work with, including your manager, is a person. Everybody wants to, generally speaking, be good at their job, be curious, understand them, ask questions, like find ways that you can work together even through frustrations. And like that's all we're doing every day. And it doesn't matter if you're in technology, if you work in food service, like all of these, like this is a life skill that applies no matter what you do. So that's my like overall takeaway. And then my like final thought is don't be afraid to be the kid who posts loudly about theater in a room full of people who only watch sports. Like be that person who shows up on the team and be your authentic self, because you create space for other people to do the same. So that's what I want for everybody here, is to show up even when it's awkward and weird. So
Yeah, I think that's fair. Asking questions and is always acceptable, and like it's okay not to know how your current manager prefers to receive feedback or prefers to communicate. It's okay to ask that. To just point blank, like, how would you prefer that I give this feedback? How did you, how do you like a high five? How can I solicit high fives from you how can I know that I'm doing a good job versus doing a bad job? And yeah, just if you treat it like the rest of your world relationship, then it should work out pretty okay. And don't always be the mom friend.
Start with kind of radical candor and pull it back as necessary. Not everyone can handle the truth. That's kind of, but at least they'll usually tell you. So with that, I want to thank all of our panelists tonight for being here and just all this amazing advice. Remember, managing up is managing relationships, managing yourself, managing all of the world around you, but it doesn't have to feel like it's painful or difficult. We've had some amazing examples here, and especially in how you can be very effective in a bunch of different situations. So again, thank you to everyone.
Thanks, Stacy. Thanks,
So-
Kate, Kaylee, and Claire. I think I got it right that time, Claire. Thanks, Erica. Thanks, everybody, for joining. We're going to go ahead and stop the recording now.